welcome to the deep dive. Forget wondering if your code just works. Today we're exploring something called vibe coding. It's a really interesting shift happening in software development.
Yeah, it really is.
It's basically about using AI, artificial intelligence, to generate or shape code based more on the desired intent and the overall feel you want your software to have.
Exactly. Think of it as a more intuitive way these two things, human creativity and programming, can actually meet.
So less about the rigid specs and more about the vibe.
That's the idea. It moves us beyond just telling the computer the nitty-gritty details of what to do step by step.
Right.
Instead, we're describing the higher level how we want the result to feel, how we want it to function.
Okay.
So our mission today really is to dig into this vibe coding idea. We want to understand why it's becoming, potentially so valuable, especially for those of you listening who are building and launching products.
We'll definitely look at some practical examples and the underlying ideas driving this whole shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's unpack vibe coding. In practice, what does it involve? When we talk about intent and desired feel, what are we really getting at?
Right. So at its heart, vibe coding has, let's say, a few key characteristics. First off, it's deeply intent-driven.
Intent-driven, okay.
Yeah. So instead of writing every single line of code or, detailing every tiny UI element, you describe the outcome you're aiming for, the vibe, basically.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Sure. Like you might say, I want a checkout process that feels really fast and secure. And the AI takes that general intent and starts generating the code, maybe even the design elements to match that feeling.
Huh. So it's less about the specific recipe and more about the overall flavor you want in the user experience.
Precisely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And this leads right into the second core aspect, rapid prototyping. Because the AI can grasp these sort of higher level intentions pretty quickly, it can generate working models much faster than traditional coding often allows.
Right. So much faster iteration.
Yeah. Exactly. Which lets product teams experiment with different vibes, different user experiences very quickly. You can get to a functional prototype in, significantly less time.
That sounds incredibly efficient, especially for testing ideas early on.
Massively, yeah. And the third key piece is personalization and style.
How so?
Well, you can actually guide the AI to produce code and designs that fit a specific brand identity, or appeal to a particular audience segment, or even evoke a certain emotional tone.
Emotional tone, like
yeah.
Happy code.
Sort of. Imagine you want your language learning app to feel really encouraging and maybe fun. You can actually prompt the AI with that vibe in mind, and the generated code and UI will try to reflect that feeling.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does the AI actually understand a request for a smooth user flow or professional layout? What's the underlying magic there?
Right. Well, it's not magic exactly, but it relies on a combination of things. First, natural language processing, or NLP. That's how the AI understands your plain English prompts. And second, these powerful generative AI models. Think things like GPT-4, GitHub Copilot, or even custom-built large language models, LLMs.
These are the AIs that can create new stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like text, images, code.
Exactly. They analyze your prompts, drawing on these massive data sets they were trained on, data sets full of code, design patterns, linguistic understanding, you name it. They interpret your intent based on those patterns.
And then they just spit out the code.
Well, they generate it. Code snippets, UI components, maybe even entire application workflows. But it's not usually a one-and-done kind of thing.
So it's more collaborative.
Absolutely. It's very much an iterative process. You review what the AI comes up with, you provide feedback, maybe make some tweaks yourself, or if it's not quite right, you reprompt it, you might give it more specific instructions.
So it's a back and forth.
Definitely. It allows you to refine the output until it really aligns with your vision. And often, that whole cycle is much faster than writing everything from scratch.
Okay, so it sounds powerful, faster, but why is vibe coding gaining so much traction now? What's driving this shift? Seems like it's popping up more.
Yeah, it does seem that way. Several factors are playing into it, I think. One really big one is the lower barrier to entry.
How do you mean?
Well, because you're expressing your intent in, natural language, people who aren't traditional programmers can participate more directly in actually creating digital products. Product managers, designers, maybe even marketers.
Right. They can describe what they envision, and the AI handles a lot of the technical translation.
Exactly. That really opens the development process to a wider range of input, doesn't it?
It really does. What else?
Secondly, the speed and flexibility we talked about, that's a huge advantage. Teams can explore multiple ideas, different directions much more quickly. That cuts down time to market, encourages more creative experiments.
Less risk in trying something new, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. And finally, vibe coding aligns really well with the whole fit-for-purpose mindset.
Fit for purpose, F4P.
Mm.
Okay, for listeners who might not be deep into that framework, can you elaborate on that connection?
Sure. The core idea of fit-for-purpose, F4P, is about delivering exactly what the customer or the business truly needs. Not just what's technically possible, but what actually serves their purpose.
Okay.
Vibe coding helps with that because it lets you focus on the desired outcome, the user experience, the feeling. You can instruct the AI to create something that meets a specific purpose and evokes a particular feeling, which increases the chances that what you build will actually resonate with your target audience right from the start.
So what does this all mean for, the product professionals listening, people in product management? How can they actually use vibe coding effectively?
Right. Well, the business benefits can be pretty significant. Think about getting a minimum viable product, an MVP, out the door faster.
Always a plus.
Definitely. With vibe coding, you can potentially test new ideas with real users much earlier in the cycle. Get that feedback sooner.
Which allows for quicker iteration, maybe finding product market fit faster.
Exactly. That's the hope. Time is obviously critical.
And are there cost savings involved too? Seems like there might be.
Absolutely. By letting AI handle more of the, let's say, standard or repetitive coding tasks, you could significantly reduce the engineering hours needed for certain parts of development.
Freeing up developers for more complex stuff.
Precisely. Higher value problems, more innovation.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea of customization at scale.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Instead of needing to rewrite huge chunks of code to tailor a product for different user segments or use cases, you might be able to achieve a lot of that customization just by adjusting the prompts you give the AI, describing slightly different vibes for different groups.
Wow, that level of personalization, if it works reliably, could be a real differentiator in the market.
It could be.
Can you give us some concrete examples? Where are we already seeing vibe coding or things like it being used out in the wild?
Yeah, we're seeing it pop up in several areas. AI-powered design tools are a prime example. Well, think about Canva. They've successfully used AI to help millions of users create graphics that fit their brand by understanding style prompts. It's essentially delivering vibe-matched visuals.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge part of their success, making design accessible.
That's a great example. Canva really democratized basic design. What other kinds of applications?
We're also seeing the growth of these no-code and low-code AI builders. Tools where users describe the features and workflows they want, often in natural language, and the AI generates a working application, or at least a starting point.
Right, bringing app creation to non-developers.
Exactly. And then you have the more advanced AI code assistants, like GitHub Copilot and similar tools. They're going beyond just suggesting the next line of code.
How so?
They're starting to understand the broader context, the intent behind the code you're writing, maybe even inferring the desired emotional tone or style, and then suggesting code that fits that overall vibe.
Okay, so for a product manager listening, how can they practically weave these tools and this approach into their daily work to get better product outcomes?
Well, one key way is by rapidly exploring product market fit, like we touched on.
Right.
Imagine being able to quickly build and A/B test different variations of a feature, maybe even a whole product concept. Each version aligned with the slightly different customer purpose or emotional trigger. Vibe coding makes that kind of rapid experimentation much more feasible.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you're building a fitness app. You could quickly prototype one version that feels super high energy, really motivating, lots of bright colors maybe, and another version that feels more calm, focused, mindful, based on what you think different user segments might need or prefer.
So you can test those different vibes directly with users much faster.
Exactly. Faster hypothesis testing, faster validation. You can also use frameworks like fit-for-purpose surveys to really understand which vibes resonate with different segments.
Connecting the feedback to the vibe.
Yes. Once you have that understanding, maybe your busy professional segment strongly prefers a no-nonsense, hyper-efficient feel. You can use AI tools, guided by vibe coding principles, to deliver tailored experiences that match those specific emotional and functional needs.
Makes sense.
And think about optimizing for retention or monetization. You could experiment with different onboarding flows, different UI styles, even just the tone of the in-app messages. all generated or tweaked through vibe coding to see what actually drives the best engagement or conversion for specific user groups.
Okay, let's try to make this even more tangible. Imagine you're explaining vibe coding to, say, someone on the business side who isn't deeply technical. How would you simplify it?
Okay. Think of it like hiring a really intuitive robot chef. Instead of giving the chef a super detailed recipe, use exactly 3.5 grams of salt, whisk for precisely 90 seconds, you tell the robot chef, make me a breakfast that feels happy and energizing.
Okay, a happy breakfast. I like it.
Right. The robot chef then uses its knowledge of ingredients, cooking techniques, maybe even presentation styles associated with happy and energizing to create that breakfast for you.
So vibe coding is like telling the AI chef the feeling you want the software meal to have.
Exactly. You tell the AI the feeling, the purpose, the vibe you want your software to embody. And the AI uses its vast knowledge, its training data, to generate the code and design aimed at achieving that. It lets product managers focus more on the user experience, the desired outcome, rather than getting bogged down in all the technical minutiae.
It sounds almost like shifting from a very literal instruction manual to a more, intuitive conversation about the end result. That's quite a shift.
It is.
Now, are there any potential downsides or maybe debates around vibe coding that product professionals should be aware of, should be thinking about?
Oh, definitely. There are some really important considerations. One big question that comes up is whether relying too heavily on AI for code generation might impact the learning and skill development of software engineers, especially junior ones.
How so? Does it devalue traditional skills?
Well, the argument goes something like this. While AI is great for handling repetitive tasks and speeding things up, it's that foundational understanding of coding principles, the problem solving involved in writing code from scratch, that allows engineers to tackle really complex problems and truly innovate.
So there's a risk of losing that deeper skill if you always rely on the AI.
That's the concern, yeah. Finding the right balance, using AI as a powerful tool without letting it hinder core skill development that's going to be crucial for teams.
That's a really important point about nurturing talent. What about the AI's ability to truly understand and capture those subtle human emotions we've been talking about? Can it really get the vibe right consistently?
That's another key debate. AI can analyze vast amounts of text, images, code, design data. It can identify patterns statistically associated with certain emotional responses, but it doesn't experience emotions itself, right? So there's a risk that the vibe it generates might feel a bit generic, or maybe based on superficial correlations rather than a genuine understanding of human feeling. It might miss the mark in specific cultural contexts, for example.
So human oversight and judgment are still critical.
Absolutely. Continuous testing with real users, getting their qualitative feedback on the emotional resonance, that remains essential. You can't just trust the AI blindly on something as nuanced as emotion.
Makes sense. Okay, to really illustrate the practical value here for product professionals, let's imagine a scenario. Let's say you're the product lead at a startup focused on online language learning. What are some key business questions you might ask your team about potentially using vibe coding?
Right. Good scenario. As the product leader there, I'd be asking things like, okay, where can vibe coding give us the biggest leverage? Is it speeding up development for new lesson formats? Is it creating features specifically designed to boost learner motivation?
So focusing on the biggest impact areas.
Exactly. I'd also want to know, how can we use this approach to rapidly personalize the learning experience? Can we tailor the vibe, maybe the tone, the interface, based on different learner goals or preferred learning styles to make it resonate more deeply with each individual?
Personalization seems key there.
Definitely. And critically, I'd be asking, what's our strategy for quality control? How do we ensure the accuracy and pedagogical soundness of AI-generated code and content? How do we maintain our specific brand, voice, and teaching approach when using these powerful tools? Managing the risks is just as important.
Those are very practical, business-focused questions. It's really about understanding the tangible benefits while also having a plan for the potential pitfalls. Okay, let's dive into the actual tools. What makes vibe coding possible? What are some of the key platforms, the integrations involved in this whole ecosystem?
Yeah, there's a growing set of tools, often AI-powered or at least AI-friendly, that are really driving this. One platform that comes up a lot in this context is Lovable.
Lovable, tell me about it.
It's designed specifically as an AI-first product development platform. The idea is that product teams can describe the intent, the desired vibe of their digital product using natural language. And the AI within Lovable then helps generate the code, the UI elements, maybe even user flows. It aims to be a sort of central hub for translating that product vision into actual software quickly.
Interesting. So it could really streamline those initial stages, getting from idea to something tangible.
That seems to be the goal. Then there are other crucial components in the workflow. Vercel is a big one.
Vercel, okay. Heard of that. That's for deployment, right?
Exactly. It's a cloud platform optimized for deploying front-end web applications really fast and efficiently. This is vital if you're iterating rapidly on AI-generated UIs. You want to get them live, get them in front of users for feedback almost instantly. Vercel enables that.
Makes sense. Fast deployment for fast iteration. What else?
Then you often need a backend. Supabase is a popular choice here. It provides an open source backend as a service.
So it handles the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Right. Databases, user authentication, storage, serverless functions, all that essential backend infrastructure. Using something like Supabase lets the development team focus more energy on the front-end vibe and the user experience without having to build and manage everything from scratch.
Okay, so Lovable maybe helps generate the front-end concept. Vercel gets it live fast. Supabase handles the back end. What about the actual coding environment where developers refine things?
That's often where VS Code, Visual Studio Code, comes in. It's probably the most popular code editor out there right now, super extensible.
And it integrates with AI tools.
Yes, seamlessly, especially with tools like GitHub Copilot. Developers can review, edit, and refine the AI-generated code right within VS Code. They can use Copilot for suggestions, for auto-completion, for further assistance in making sure the code quality is high, and it still matches that desired vibe.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have APIs, application programming interfaces. These are the connectors, the glue that allows the AI-generated front-end components to talk to the Supabase backend or other external services, other tools your application needs to interact with.
It sounds like there's a real synergy, kind of modern stack emerging around this AI-first development approach.
There definitely is.
How do these typically work together? Can you walk through a possible vibe coding process using these tools?
Sure. A typical workflow might start with, say, a product manager using Lovable. They describe a new feature or a user flow, focusing on the intended user experience, the emotional feel, the vibe.
Okay.
Lovable's AI then generates some initial code, maybe some UI components. This could then be almost instantly deployed as a preview environment using Vercel.
So the PM can see it live quickly.
Exactly, or maybe share it with stakeholders. Then developers might jump into VS Code. They'd review the generated code, maybe use Copilot to help refine it, fix any issues, ensure it meets quality standards and aligns with the overall product architecture and vision. Meanwhile, Supabase is providing the necessary back-end functionalities, user accounts, data storage, whatever's needed. And APIs connect this new feature to the rest of the application or any third-party services. The whole process is really designed for that rapid iteration loop, constantly improving based on feedback.
That paints a much clearer picture. Thanks. And we've talked a lot about creating the right vibe. How do established frameworks like Fit for Purpose, F4P, and Jobs to be Done, JTBD, actually help product teams figure out what that right vibe should even be for their specific users? It can't just be guesswork, right?
Absolutely not guesswork, or at least it shouldn't be. These frameworks, F4P and JTBD, are fundamental for grounding your vibe choices in actual user needs and motivations. They help you understand the why behind customer behavior.
Okay, so how does Fit for Purpose help specifically?
F4P helps you segment your market based on the specific purpose your product serves for different groups of customers. Why are they really using it? What are they trying to achieve?
Purpose-based segmentation. Got it.
Yeah, right. And then F4P guides you in identifying the fitness criteria those customers use to judge whether your product is actually meeting their purpose. And critically, these criteria often include not just functional aspects, does it do the job, but also emotional factors. How does using the product make them feel?
So the feeling is part of the fitness criteria.
It can be, yes. Is the vibe right for their purpose? F4P also emphasizes gathering customer feedback systematically using tools like F4P cards or fitness box score surveys. This gives you rich data, both qualitative and quantitative, on how well you're meeting those needs and expectations, including the emotional ones.
And that feedback fuels the iteration.
Exactly. That feedback becomes invaluable input for iteratively refining your product, using vibe coding techniques or traditional methods to ensure it consistently delivers the desired function and the desired feel.
Okay, and how does jobs to be done, GTBD, contribute to figuring out the right vibe?
JTBD focuses laser-like on the job that your customer is hiring your product to do. It digs deep into the underlying progress they're trying to make in a specific circumstance.
Going beyond just the surface-level task.
Way beyond. It looks at the functional, emotional, and even social dimensions of that job. Understanding those emotional jobs, what feeling is the customer trying to achieve, is absolutely key to defining the right vibe.
So understanding the emotional goal.
Yes. JTBD research helps you uncover the context, the triggers that lead someone to seek a solution, and the struggle they're experiencing. By focusing on helping them make progress in that struggle, you can design an experience and therefore a vibe that truly supports them emotionally and functionally at each step of their journey.
Could you give us a specific example? How might F4P and JTBD work together to define a vibe for, say, a digital product?
Yeah, let's go back to that digital banking app idea. Using JTBD interviews, you might discover that one core job users hire the app for is maybe help me feel secure and completely in control of my finances, especially when I'm feeling anxious about money.
Okay, that's a strong emotional driver, reducing anxiety, promoting control.
Definitely. Now, applying F4P, you might identify a customer segment that strongly prioritizes this feeling of security and control. You then uncover their fitness criteria. These might include things like crystal clear transaction history, super easy access to human support if needed, multi-factor authentication, and maybe an overall calm, trustworthy, uncluttered user interface.
So the UI itself becomes part of feeling secure.
Exactly. Based on these combined JTBD and F4P insights, you would then use vibe coding principles or guide your designers and developers to intentionally create a user experience that delivers that specific vibe. Maybe using calming colors, clean typography, reassuring language and notifications, readily available help resources, all contributing to that desired vibe of security, trustworthiness, and control. The key takeaway is that the right vibe isn't arbitrary. It shouldn't be just the product team's preference. It should be derived directly from a deep understanding of your customer's purpose and their underlying emotional jobs.
That makes perfect sense. Grounding the vibe in real user needs. This has been a really comprehensive look at the concepts and tools. Now, to bring it all together and see these principles really humming in action, let's talk about Workmate Buddy. Our sources highlighted this as a real-world example, a microsauce built with this kind of modern AI-first stack, really embodying vibe coding and fit for purpose. Can you share some insights into how it was developed?
Yeah, Workmate Buddy is a fascinating case study. It apparently started from a very specific user need, or job to be done, really. The core question was something like, how can we help busy professionals quickly challenge those unhelpful, distorted thoughts and reset their mindset right in the moment they need it most, like during a stressful workday?
Okay, very specific problem.
Very specific. And from the get-go, the development process was reportedly heavily informed by jobs to be done research to deeply understand those struggling moments of their target users, often knowledge workers, professionals facing cognitive traps.
And fit for purpose.
Yes, they focused intently on delivering a solution that was precisely fit for purpose for that specific job. The idea was to avoid feature bloat, avoid distractions, and just deliver on that core need effectively.
So a very focused approach driven by that deep user understanding. How did vibe coding, or these AI-first tools, play a role in actually building the product?
Well, the minimum viable product, the MVP, was apparently built using a tech stack that perfectly illustrates these principles. They used Lovable as the primary AI co-pilot.
The one we discussed earlier.
Exactly, for rapid code generation, editing, and deployment. This allowed the team to quickly translate their vision, likely focused on a clear, supportive, non-judgmental vibe, into a functional product.
Okay. What about the backend and the core AI?
They used Supabase for the secure and scalable back-end handling user authentication, data storage, analytics. Again, letting them focus on the user-facing experience. And crucially, they leveraged Google's Gemini AI models for the advanced AI features that actually help users reframe those negative thoughts, providing cognitive restructuring techniques right in the app that directly addresses the core job to be done.
And the development environment.
VS Code reportedly served as the collaborative development environment for refining the code generated by Lovable and integrating everything.
It sounds like this AI-first approach, using tools like Lovable and Gemini, really enabled them to be incredibly agile.
Absolutely. The sources suggest they were able to ship a working product very quickly, and then critically, they embraced continuous learning and iteration based on real user feedback.
Constantly checking if it was fit for purpose.
Exactly. Every feature, every interaction, every part of the user experience was apparently evaluated against questions like, is this truly fit for purpose for our target user? And does this deliver the right vibe one of practical support, clarity, and maybe even a bit of calm confidence?
And the result? What is Workmate Buddy like?
The result is described as a highly focused, efficient micro SaaS. It aims to provide instant, research-backed mindset resets specifically for busy professionals, right when they feel stuck or overwhelmed. There seems to be a real emphasis on practical clarity, avoiding jargon or fluff, just providing useful tools in the moment.
It sounds like a really compelling practical example of applying these concepts, F4P, JTBD, vibe coding, with AI tools to build something genuinely useful.
It certainly seems like a great illustration.
For our listeners who are intrigued and want to see this in action, maybe experience that vibe themselves, where can they learn more about Workmate Buddy?
Yeah, if you're interested in seeing what a modern product team using AI agents and pragmatic product management principles can build, you can check out Workmate Buddy. The link provided in our source material is linktr.ee Workmate Buddy. That's linktr.ee/Workmate Buddy.
Okay, linktr.ee Workmate Buddy.
They encourage folks to try it out and actually share feedback on whether it helps them achieve a better mindset at work, which is very much in line with that continuous learning approach.
Great. So as we wrap up this deep dive into vibe coding, what are the main takeaways? The key things you want our listeners, especially the product professionals, to really remember?
I think the core message is this. Vibe coding represents a potentially powerful new approach. It allows product teams to harness the speed and efficiency of AI for a much more rapid, intent-driven development.
Focusing on the experience, not just the function.
Exactly. By focusing on the desired vibe, the intended user experience right from the outset, you have the potential to build products that are more deeply aligned with user needs and emotions, hopefully delivering greater value.
But it's not magic.
Definitely not magic. It's absolutely essential, and this is maybe the most important point, to ground this whole approach in a deep, genuine understanding of your customers. Understand their purpose, understand the jobs they are trying to get done, use frameworks like fit for purpose and jobs to be done to guide the vibe you're aiming to create. The AI is a tool. The understanding has to come from you and your research.
Well said. Ground the vibe and purpose. Okay, and with that, here's a final thought for all of you to consider as you go about your day. As artificial intelligence continues its rapid advance, how will the ability to intentionally craft, manage, and iterate on the vibe of digital experiences become not just a nice-to-have, but maybe a fundamental core competency for successful product teams in the very near future?
Definitely something to chew on.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.